And next, let's talk about dry bean. So by now you maybe have looked at some of the side. We have corn. We have 3 dry bean studies here. This one is the longest, where we've been looking at quite a number of things, but most recently we are emphasizing fertility. And so you can see the different fertilizer treatments we have in here. This is a look at some of our past data we've generated with this study. We've looked at tillage, starter fertilizer placement, foliar fungicide, and row spacing. So row spacing, for example, 3 site years of data, we found a really nice boost in yield with 22 versus 30 inch in the tune of 17%. Do we guarantee that? Of course not. But it sure looks promising. And we have some row spacing studies down there that we'll talk about. And then you can look at the foliar fungicide and the tillage information. But what I want to emphasize is the starter fertilizer, because that's what we're continuing to explore with this study. And we have a modest yield increase with the 2-inch band versus the in-furrow. By the way, NDSU doesn't recommend, in general, any fertilizer with dry bean seed because of concern with injury, and also because we don't expect a yield response with dry beans or soybean with that concentrated band, especially right next. But we didn't make the comparison 2-inch band versus in-furrow, 3% increase or about a bag increase with the 2-inch band. The next slide is a comparison of in-furrow 1034. We don't recommend this, but we thought it'd be good to explore it. And so notice we have untreated check, 2.5 to 3 gallons per acre, and then 5 to 6 gallons per acre, and both of these in-furrow. So notice the stand. When we had the low rate, the 2.5 to 3 gallons, really a minimal impact to stand, really none statistically. But look at the 5 to 6. It dropped at about 14% compared to the untreated check. Now look at the yield. We saw a very nice yield bump with 2.5 to 3 gallon average across 2 site years so far. And this was with soil that had low levels of P, from 5 to 6 parts per million. You know, almost a 4-bag increase compared to the untreated check. It was less with the high rate, the 5 to 6 gallons. You notice about a bag increase compared to the untreated check. So this data so far tells me if phosphorus levels are low, it looks like a modest rate will provide some benefit. Most people will apply some starter, sometimes with the seed, because of the zinc. They use it as a carrier because certainly dry beans are very responsive to zinc if our soil test levels are under 1 part per million. So what are we doing this year? Well, you've looked at the signs numerous times by now, I hope. And you'll see that we have some of the repeat treatments. We had the 3 gallons, 1034 in-furrow, I think that's the far one, if I remember right. And then we had the high rate here, untreated check. And then in addition, we thought it'd be interesting to show the impact of the 624-6. And I use the rate is different because the phosphorus level is different, but they're equivalent. That rate is equivalent to the 3 gallons of the 1034-0. And then we also have a broadcast application, 9 gallons, which would be based, comes right off NDSU's tables, and it's a third higher than the banded rate. And then finally, we threw in a combination of 3 gallons of 1034-0 in-furrow, and then followed it with the post-application of a foliar fertilizer and a growth promoter. Are you guys curious what those are? I'll tell you. They're Winfield products. Ascend is a growth promoter, and they're Maxin. That's their product. So that's what I use as a foliar application, and it was at well into flowering. So we'll see. So we have a few crop guys here. We got a couple livestock guys. JW, let's see how good your eyes are. I know you're unbiased because you're a livestock specialist. Do you see any difference in visually in the treatments tonight?
Well, the IF at 6 gallons looks like it either delays maturity or puts out more plant.
Well, it will delay maturity. We see that fairly consistently. And reduce the stand a bit. So we've been taking notes, and we'll see what happens. Violation of planting date work with dry bean that we've done in 2012, the early year, and then last year, the late year, and of course again this year, I'm sure all of you would classify it as a late year. And so what we're doing is we planted the 3 dates, and they're signed. From the sign to the white flag would be the treated area, and we're looking at all three of the market types, the pinto, the navy, and the blacks. And so the early planting date, the May 23rd, I got physiological maturity notes on those. I'm starting to take them on the second date, and we'll wait a bit on the third date. But you notice on the data we've generated the last 2 years, it's really boring. There's just we haven't seen any impact on yield based on planting date. Maybe we'll have something happen this year. So that's what we're doing. And this was stimulated from 2012 when you heard people planting their beans early May. And we thought, well, we should have some data. So we're trying. Here, this study, the previous one was, as I mentioned, we have 3 years on that. But we started this study for a very basic reason. NDSU recommends for small seeded edible beans, we have navies here, and we have blacks over here on the west side of the sign. And we recommend establishing 90,000 plants per acre. But this is based on data from way back, I think even in the 60s. And so it seemed logical that we have a lot of newer, improved varieties, and these two market types are planted typically in narrow rows. And so is 90,000 correct? So we're trying to explore that. So we're looking at the factors that are listed on the sign. 3 row spacings with most interest in the 14 and 21, and the targeted stands as listed. Personally, I think the winner here will be the either 14 or 21 inch and probably the intermediate plant population. So we're going to check that out. Trying to update our recommendations on these more novelty beans.
Clay beans, maybe you plant them, the yield goes down, right on edible beans go down.
I wish we could figure that out. Well, maybe warm soils, but we've monitored the soil temperatures too at planting, and you know, there's differences there in soil temps. I know the first year we were dry through the mid part of the season, and then we got rains, and that benefited that late planting. So I think that's the reason for it in 2012. And we'll see what happens. I mean, over here, the late planted, I mean, that got benefit of some recent rains, and if the frost can be delayed, maybe that one will come through the best.
Do you see any improvement tonight as you bring the rows closer together?
We're measuring that, but in general, it's pretty subtle on the differences in height. Yeah, so we're generating all that data, and if we find something exciting, we'll share it.